We're right with you. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
6:07 on WMAL. Good Friday morning to you. This is the Morning Majority. Brian Neiman, Mary Catherine Ham's in this morning from the Daily Caller. Also here on Fox. Andrew Breitbart's in the house as well, author of the new book, Righteous Indignation. Pleased to be joined now by Peter MORICI, economist, University of Maryland, professor there as well, who will be hosting this Saturday afternoon. You can check him out right here on WMAL 4 to 7 on Saturday. Morning, Peter.
Good morning.
So, happy Earth Day, by the way. I don't know, is today Earth Day or is tomorrow Earth Day? It's coming around.
I think it's today.
Yeah, it's either today or tomorrow. I don't even know. But
I was in the first Earth Day.
You were?
In 1970, yes.
How was it?
Well, it was very much like it looks now. A lot of idealistic young people who, want to make fundamental changes in the economy. Actually, those things are starting to happen simply because oil is so expensive, though the impact on the economy is not as large as people think.
I was going to ask you about that because actually in my neighborhood, I've seen there have been a couple of houses that have gone with the solar panels on the roof, and I actually have talked to people about it. It's rather expensive, but my neighbor crunched the numbers and said it would be about 10 years before you could start to make money off of it or to be cost effective. Are we seeing the green technologies coming down in price as the traditional cost of energy like oil going up in price?
Well, they are coming down in price, but bear in mind the price of natural gas is pretty low, and there's so much natural gas under the United States, sooner or later, it's going to come out. Sooner or later the Congress is going to have enough of it, and with the imported oil, and there are a lot of things we can do with gas, so that, these alternatives still face considerable challenges. They're more of a style statement and a lifestyle statement than they are a reasonable economic choice.
Now, Obama has announced, I think today, that he's going to appoint one of his favorite things, a council of sorts, to investigate the gas prices.
Yeah, right. A commission.
What becomes of that?
Gas prices.
Yeah, well, what becomes of that sort of action? Does the productive dialogue lead to lowered gas prices?
No, there won't be a productive dialogue. This is an example of the president, hanging out in a food co-op and thinking he can learn some economics that way. He has lots of generalizations, nostrums, and platitudes in his head. And, this is just an example of a belief structure that it's non-Euclidean economics. This is not the product of collusion. Oil's expensive, and there's only 42 gallons of gasoline in every barrel of oil. Work it out. At $110 a barrel, you should be paying $4 a gallon with refining costs and all the rest.
Do you think the price is right for crude right now? Is there a little bit of inflation or a bubble into that price? Ooh,
that's tough. It's like, you're asking a priest if you're going to heaven?
Yeah. I've asked the priest that before.
Yeah, and he's probably giving you an answer you don't like, and so will I. My feeling is that these prices are not out of line with underlying realities. That is the very rapid growth in China and the fact that they regulate oil prices in China, so that pushes the adjustment on the rest of the world. China has lots of inflation, but they have less inflation in gasoline and diesel fuel than the rest of us do. No, there's very strong demand, and also oil comes out in very nasty places, and geographically and politically, and the United States has chosen not to develop its domestic oil and gas. And as a consequence, that makes things much worse.
Yeah, that's a policy decision by the administration, essentially. And he's also been pushing green technology ever since he became president of the United States.
And oil production in Brazil.
Right.
Right. Well, it's okay to drill off somebody else's shore, but not ours. It's the peak of hypocrisy. They're always saying, think locally but act globally. Mm-hmm. Well, this guy is thinking locally, politically, and acting globally irresponsibly.
Well, how much of an impact do we have an idea of the impact that his policy, either on drilling or on pushing green technology, has had on the economy?
Well, think about it this way: if we imported $100 billion less a year in oil, which would be somewhat of a step down, it would be maybe a third less or something. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but right. Then we would add about 2 percentage points to GDP because of the multiplier effect and so on. It's a big difference if you're paying $4 a gallon and most of the money's going to Saudi Arabia than if the money's going here to a domestic oil company, because then the domestic oil company is drilling here, employing people. Those are very high-quality jobs in terms of pay and so forth,
right.
And we're being deprived of those jobs by these policies. It's not just him, though. It's been a succession of, Democratic Congresses and so forth that have essentially shut down development. Even in Bush's era, he couldn't do very much because he didn't have 60 senators.
Now, when it comes to the stock market, we saw it go down a lot on Monday when the S&P came out and said that downgraded the debt from stable to negative, but still with the AAA bond rating. But, man, it's bounced right back up with all these profits coming from these companies. So, what should we be concerned at what the S&P said?
Yeah, we should be very concerned. There's a difference between the finances of the United States and the stock market. Remember, most companies today earn more than half of their profits abroad. Or I shouldn't say most companies. The S&P 500 is 80% of the U.S. stock market, and they earn at least 50% of their profits abroad. The U.S. economy can slog along at 2 or 3%, but if China and India and the rest are growing at gangbusters, they do well, even if they don't create jobs here. Also, there's a lot of underlying strength in the U.S. economy that doesn't reflect itself in more jobs. And the U.S. government can have severe financial problems while those companies continue to do well because they're big exporters.
But I was going to ask you about that, because if we do have a debt crisis and we don't get things fixed in the next couple of months, or the whole debt ceiling crisis, then these companies and the stock prices are going to have to crumble, right? So I guess my point is that investors still believe that that we're not going to have a debt problem.
Did you know that International Nickel, which has been a Canadian company for almost 100 years now, was originally a New Jersey-based company? It moved. General Electric, Caterpillar, General Motors, and so forth are global companies. They're going to make money abroad, even if they can't make it here. And so, I wouldn't be so quick to draw that conclusion. There might be a temporary swoon, but these companies still remain quite vital. The U.S. economy is going to have its problems, but a debt crisis in the United States is not quite like a debt crisis in Greece. It isn't like the spigot will be turned off completely, but rather interest rates will rise. My feeling is this. We either spend less now, or the bond market will compel us to spend less by raising interest rates on what we pay for debt, and that will squeeze out other expenses in the government, and then we will finally deal with it. Also, we have more room than most governments do to accomplish efficiencies. The United States may make world-class jet planes and turbines, but we have one of the most inefficient and corrupt governments to ever succeed on the planet, and it's maybe not going to succeed anymore.
Well, Peter, going into the...
But by the way, it is really corrupt. Let me give you an example of how corrupt it is. Put a dollar sign on it, okay? We pay 55% of the payouts for medical care in the United States now come from the state or local governments, federal or state governments, okay? We pay $8,000 per person for health care. The Germans, who are a very wealthy society and can even afford to pay more, only spend $4,000, and their payout from the government is 80%. Our government just doesn't get it right. Listen to the things that come out of Barack Obama's mouth, for example, about solar energy. I mean, they don't make any economic sense. We are not being competently run.
Well, going into the debt ceiling discussion that we're going to be having coming up, what does the S&P and the market and all these sort of things, what do they need to see that would assure them as far as a budget deal, or what's
I don't think that's as significant as the Republicans would like to think, because it's very close. It's going to take a couple of years to put together a real package. And that's why the S&P gave them till 2013 before they will then reevaluate U.S. debt. My feeling is they just need to make a down payment. But what's got to stop are these endless programs. Well, if we don't reach these things, then this trigger will happen.
Right.
Where they substitute process for substantive change. They can't agree on substantive change, so they put in place process. But to all my Democratic friends who are listening, which are probably only 3 in the listening audience.
I think there's 7, actually, this morning.
7, okay?
I did the research on it.
Government spending over the last 4 years has increased by $1.1 trillion. That's a 25% increase. All we needed for inflation was $200 billion. Where did the other $900 billion go? Remember I said this is the most corrupt government on the face of the planet?
I heard you say that, yeah.
I mean, there it is. I mean, where did that money go? How are we tangibly better off? By the way, in 2007, we had the Bush tax cuts in place, and we had the 2 wars raging. So it's not that. And we only had a deficit of $161 billion. Where did all that money go? But I mean, when one of the principal political parties keeps saying, well, it's the Bush tax cuts when it wasn't, or it's the wars when it wasn't, when they won't even acknowledge the facts, And then on the other side, they're saying, well, we just cut taxes, right? The economy's just going to grow and flourish, and we're going to grow our way out of it. There's no way you can grow your way out of it a budget deficit.
All right, Peter. You're fired up. We appreciate it as always.
That's be our lead-off topic, and I'll have Pat Hill from the Washington Times.
Oh, sounds good. Nice. We'll be listening 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Peter MORICI here on W.